You are tuned into LocalMotion on 91.3 WVKR, independent radio, Poughkeepsie, New York. Please consider subscribing to the LocalMotion Facebook page as well as subscribing on the YouTube channel. Now, let's get Mr. Happy Traum on the line. Happy? Happy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, sure. It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. You started with that "I Shall Be Released," which is such a great song, of course. And one of the things that might not be immediately evident for people listening to it was that the keyboard part on that, which was a clavinet, very prominent throughout, was played by Richard Manuel.
Oh, wow.
From the band. And he came into the studio when I was doing that and did me a huge favor by playing on this album. And, they were at the top of their game at that point. This was recorded in 1979, I think.
Wow.
So, and Richard was a friend and a neighbor here in Woodstock, along with the other guys in the band. And, one of the reasons that version of the song means a lot to me is that Richard
was on it,
playing on it.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you for the story. It's wonderful. I'd like to just also start out with a brief introduction, if I may. And
of course.
Start off by saying folk singer, guitarist, singer, teacher, instructional video producer Happy Traum was part of the legendary Washington Square Greenwich Village folk scene of the 1950s and 60s. He's performed throughout the U.S., Canada, Europe, Australia, and Japan. Happy, along with his wife Jane, founded Homespun Music Instruction. Happy, along with Jim Queskin, will be performing on Friday, April 22nd at the Town Crier Cafe in Beacon, and on Saturday, April 23rd at the Stissing Center in Pine Plains. And it's always an honor to welcome you back to LocalMotion, Mr. Happy Traum.
Thank you, Rita.
You're
nice
welcome.
To be here.
I also want to wish you, if I know this correctly, I know it's 3 or 4 weeks away, but I'd like to maybe be the first one to wish you a very happy early birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 4 weeks, a little under 4 weeks away.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, let's throw that in there just to, somebody's got to be the first to wish you a happy birthday.
Yeah, that's true. That's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got some great shows coming up. We're going to talk all about that. But every time I talk with you, we all do. We're all lucky enough to get such an education and such history of folk music because you were a huge part of that and in the midst of it in the 50s and 60s. So I love to learn about your initial start to music, and I know you went to the art school in New York City, the High School of Music and Art, and you were from the Bronx. But start talking about when the folk music came into your life and how it came into your life.
Well, the great thing about going to the High School of Music and Art when I went in the early to mid 50s was it was a magnet for creative kids from all 5 boroughs of New York, and some of them were kind of kids from progressive families, left-wing families, and they knew about folk music, which I didn't know about. I just knew about the pop music that I heard on the radio. Mm-hmm. But a couple of them, told me about this concert that they were going to in Brooklyn by this guy named Pete Seeger. Mm. And so I went along, just like, sounded like fun. I don't know. I might have already been playing a little bit of guitar at that point. I don't remember. But seeing Pete Seeger just totally changed the course of my life. Mm. Just the idea that after listening to the pop music of the day, the Patti Pages and Johnny Ray and Frankie Lane and Vaughn Monroe and all those guys, and they were all orchestrated and sounded like you could never do what they do. But there I saw this lone guy on a stage, with maybe, 1,200 people in an audience, singing songs with him, and it was just him and his banjo.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, you can actually make music without all the trappings of a studio and an orchestra and arrangements and all that stuff. And also the fact that he was singing about all this stuff that I knew nothing about, working people and peace and civil rights and whalers and, miners, all these things. I was a middle-class Jewish kid from the Bronx. What did I know about this stuff, But then, hanging around these other kids at Music and Art, I met, for instance, Eric Weisberg, who was later this incredible, he was even then an incredible banjo player, also played fiddle and bass, and did the Dueling Banjos record. He was the banjo player for the great film track for Deliverance, the soundtrack.
Oh wow! Mm-hmm.
And he was also went out on the road for years with Judy Collins and with Art Garfunkel and all kinds of people. I mean, he was just a very in-demand musician, and he was there in high school when I was there, as was Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Oh, wow.
Later, of course, but not at that point. And he was playing his guitar in the park like everybody else, sitting around on the grass on a nice day.
Oh.
So,
and when you say the park, you're talking about Washington Square?
No, actually, before that, there was a little park outside of the high school that we went to, Music and Art, which was up in Harlem on 135th Street and Convent Avenue. I'm not sure the name of the park. I knew it, but now I've forgotten it. Mm-hmm. But it was a very nice little park that on a nice day, the kids would go out after school and sit around and play songs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you're right, because then eventually I gravitated to the Village and Washington Square Park, which was like even though I did go to New York University, but that was more my university for music than anything else.
I bet it was.
Washington Square. I mean, that's where I met lifelong friends, people that I know to this day.
Isn't that something?
Those who survived anyway.
Right. And while you were at NYU, I understand you received an album from Brownie McGhee.
Well, no, not exactly. What happened was that I was given an album of his by a friend of mine who said, you got to listen to this guy. And I was a little aware of him because he and Sonny Terry had been playing around New York, and so had Reverend Gary Davis, another amazing guitar player, who were kind of legendary older guys around New York. But when I heard this solo record by Brownie McGhee, it just completely just entranced me. So I actually ended up calling him from NYU uptown, and he offered to hear me and see if I was worthy of getting guitar lessons with him.
And apparently you were.
I was, and I spent about 2 or 3 years on and off going to his house he was living in East Harlem at the time on East 125th Street. And I used to take the subway down from the Bronx, then walk all the way across from 6th Avenue all the way across to like between 2nd and 3rd, up 5 flights of stairs to where he was living with his family at the time.
It was exercise getting to the lesson.
Yeah, it was a whole, trek,
just
to get there.
Right.
But it was definitely worth it. And I kind of based a lot of my playing to this day on what I learned from Brownie McGhee, in those days.
And prior to Brownie, did you have lessons with anyone else?
Very, very short. There was one guy named Walter Rame who was kind of on the scene a little bit, but he was more of a studio musician and an arranger and stuff. He gave me a couple of my first chords, kind of like cowboy song kind of things. Mm-hmm. But Brownie, was blues, he opened up a whole world of African American music to me, the blues, and Blind Boy Fuller, and through him I met Gary Davis and Sonny Terry, and it was just an amazing education right there.
Oh yeah, right. To learn from those guys, it must have been incredible.
Yeah, in fact, one day I was having a lesson with Brownie, and Sonny Terry showed up and sat in on the lesson with his harmonica.
Oh.
I mean, what could be better than that, right?
Oh man, wow, that's amazing. Wow,
yeah.
wow. Another musician I think important in your world at that time was Gil Turner.
Yes, couple of years later, when I was starting to spend time in the Village, this was probably 61, 62. I actually met Gil Turner originally on a anti-nuclear submarine march in, I think it was Groton, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Sure, big naval base down there.
Yeah, that's right. And it was kind of like a anti-war, early anti-war march. And Gil was kind of leading songs there, and I met him and became friends with him. And Gil was a big, larger-than-life guy, physically big. He was well over 6 feet. He was an ex-football player.
Wow.
In college, and but he was a very active kind of organizer and song leader, and had a huge, big voice. And he was one of Bob Dylan's first friends when Bob came to New York. So through Gil, I met Bob, like in 1962, probably.
Wow! And then you guys were in.
Friends.
You guys were in the group called New World Singers?
Yeah, Gil. So that was a trio with Bob Cohen and a wonderful African American singer named Dolores Dixon. And Gil Turner wanted my tenor voice and also my guitar. They didn't have a lot of guitar chops. He was a banjo player primarily. And Bob Cohen was quite good on the guitar, but more of a rhythm player. So I came in as kind of a lead guitarist and a tenor singer.
Wow.
And we made an album for. We were on an album for Folkways where we sang "Blowing in the Wind" for the first recorded version of that song. With
an artist called Blind Boy Grunt.
That's right. Me and Blind Boy Grunt did a duet. And, of course, Dylan had just signed with Columbia, so he couldn't really record under his own name, so he recorded under Blind Boy Grunt.
Wow.
And
what was this, 1963?
Yes, early 63.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the Folkways studio, which was a very small room, and it was packed with Phil Oakes, Pete Seeger, Bob Dylan, the New World Singers, Mark Spolstra, whose the name isn't that well known now, but he was quite revered back then as a songwriter and a guitarist. And the Freedom Singers from Albany, Georgia, who were leading song kind of civil rights. They were a fabulous quartet.
Wow.
And working for SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and going all over the country raising money for the sit-ins and the civil rights things that were going on. And we, as the New World Singers, were doing benefits all around New York and the Northeast for them. So a lot of our shows were benefits for civil rights and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and social justice causes.
Yeah, that's right. And we eventually got signed to Atlantic Records, which was kind of an anomaly because they were mostly known for heavy blues and R&B, Ray Charles and Otis Redding and people like that. I mean, they were very heavily oriented towards other things, but we were there. I think we were probably their first and maybe last folk song group.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we made an album for them, and then that was kind of the end of my New World Singers career. My second daughter was born.
Oh.
1964, and by that time I didn't want to be traveling too much, so I left the group and went on to other things.
Went on to other things, yeah. So just to go back to that recordings thing, I know, I mean, that's history right there being made, and you were part of it. Was that your personal first time in a recording studio as well, or?
It was actually my first time in a professional recording studio, yeah. I'd made little demos in people's living rooms and things with pretty good equipment, but I was never in a real recording studio. And this was Folkways, and Folkways was kind of like the leading, at that point, for folk music, it was everything.
Right.
They, Moash and Folkways Records was kind of the be-all and end-all of the, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, all those people, plus they had all this ethnological stuff, songs from around the world, and it was just an amazing record company. Did
you feel like you were part of something bigger? Like
I did. I did at that point. Even at that point, I was awestruck.
Yeah.
Because first of all, there was Pete Seeger right in the same little studio with me.
Was that the first time you had met him?
No, I had met him on a couple of other occasions. In 1958, when I was still at the university, I played with a friend named Barry Kornfeld, who I also met in Washington Square Park, who played banjo, and we played in something called the New York Folk Festival at Town Hall, which was also a big deal because Town Hall is a big venue.
Yeah.
And Pete was on that show, as was Reverend Gary Davis. So I met Pete there. And a couple of other times, Barry Kornfeld and I actually made a trip up to Beacon and visited Pete in his little log cabin, probably around 1956, maybe, or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So I met Pete a couple of times, but it was still very awe-inspiring to be in his presence.
Yeah. Wow, amazing.
And I met Phil Oakes for the first time in that studio. That same studio, Phil came along, and I hadn't met him before. I had heard his music, and actually the New World Singers was singing one of his songs. But then I met him, and we became friendly, and the Freedom Singers were just fabulous.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing.
It was.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Really, I can't even imagine. Just love to be a fly on the wall. Too bad. Was anything recorded there? Like videoed or any document?
No, nobody had videos back then.
No, nobody.
No, just what came out on the record, and it was like we would just take turns in front of the mic and sing our songs. There was no such thing as rehearsing or, In fact, the one song that I did with Bob Dylan as a duet called "Let Me Die in My Footsteps." Bob just called me out into the hallway outside the studio, and he said, "Hey, why don't you sing this song with me?" And he had this typewritten, words, and he said, "Here's how it goes." And we went over it in the hall, and then came back into the studio and just recorded it.
Wow,
that was it. Yeah,
amazing. I love that story.
It wasn't exactly produced in the way records are, produced. It was just standing in front of a microphone and singing the songs. Right. And when we sang "Blowing in the Wind," Bob was standing like 3 feet in front of us while we were doing it. So, it was kind of, but we didn't think that much of it in those days. Bob was just, we knew how great he was. I have to say that, but
you did.
But he was just one of the guys also at the same time.
Right. But you knew
his name wasn't in lights yet.
Right. Yeah, not long afterwards, though. And then Happy, you also came out in 1965 and wrote your first lesson book, Fingerpicking Styles for Guitar.
You did your homework.
Of course, always. So tell me about why you wanted to write that and what prompted you to do that so early on in your career.
Well, I had left the New World Singers, and then I was a guitar teacher, which I had done even before that. When I was in college, I was teaching guitar too to make a little extra book money and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been teaching guitar and teaching some of these songs. And the idea of this book was to take kind of classic traditional guitar pieces that had never really been written down before by people like Elizabeth Cotten and Merle Travis and Doc Watson and Mississippi John Hurt and all these people, and actually transcribe their playing in a way that people could sit down with music and tablature and actually learn to play these amazing traditional guitar pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure I realized when I was doing it that nobody had ever done that before. So I took the idea, I guess I did a couple of sample ones, and I took the idea to a guy named Irwin Silber, who was the editor of Sing Out magazine. And you have to realize Sing Out, like Folkways, was kind of the Bible of the folk music world back in those days. And for the next probably 50 years, it was started by Pete Seeger, and they were printing songs every month and news of who was playing where and, profiles of singers and stuff. And it was kind of took a lot of nerve to just even go up to the office and meet Irwin Silber and ask him what he thought of this idea.
Mm-hmm.
And Irwin had a publishing company called Oak Publications. So I said, how would this be for Oak Publications? And he just said, yeah, go for it, do it.
Wow.
I like the idea.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So I just did it, and when it came out, I was totally amazed that it actually started selling, and it's in print to this day. It's never been out of print.
That's amazing.
It's gone through different editions, and now it's combined with a second book that I had written of the similar subject matter.
And what's the name of the second book?
Well, that was called Traditional and Contemporary Fingerpicking.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I'm trying to remember now. But they've been combined now into one book called Fingerpicking Styles for Guitar, so it's a big, much thicker book. And then after that, since I needed some income, aside from my one-on-one teaching, I started doing more editorial writing. I started writing for Sing Out magazine and doing a column called Teach In. I started this Teach In column with them. And then I wrote several other books for Oak Publications. One called Bluegrass Guitar, one called The Blues Bag. And I also wrote, I was on hire. Those books were for royalties, which, kept me afloat for quite a few years. But then I also was hired by Oak Publications, and also they were eventually sold to another company called Music Sales Corporation. And Music Sales hired me to do the Arlo Guthrie book and the Incredible String Band book and the James Taylor song book, to do the guitar transcriptions for those books. So right into the late 60s and early 70s, I was doing a lot of that kind of work, which I don't think I could do anymore. I wouldn't have the patience now.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a lot.
Oh, my God. I couldn't even imagine doing all that transcribing, but
it seems like all that you just talked about was the groundwork for Homespun.
Exactly, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because people started to write to me who had fingerpicking styles of guitar, but if they're living in rural Idaho or something, they can't find those records.
Right.
They can't go to their local store and find a Mississippi John Hurt record or we were lucky in New York. We had all those resources.
Right.
But if you were in, North Texas or someplace, I don't know, you might be able to find Lightning Hopkins or a couple of those other people, but you couldn't necessarily find Doc Watson or certainly not Dave Van Ronk or other contemporary people that I was also incorporating, Mike Seeger, Tom Paley, those kinds of people into the book. These are people that I met in Washington Square and loved their music. So people were writing to me, and I thought, well, as long as, maybe I need to put these things on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And, as best I can. I couldn't play like Merle Travis or like John Hurt, but I could certainly do it enough so that people could learn how to get the basic idea of how to fingerpick.
Right. And
so I did a series of lessons on reel-to-reel tapes.
Oh.
Now, those weren't cassettes, they weren't videos, they were just reel-to-reel tapes, and put little ads in Sing Out magazine, and in the same time I started Homespun, Guitar Player magazine started, so I took out a little, and also Rolling Stone started that same year, 1967.
Wow.
So I put little tiny ads in Rolling Stone, and sure enough, people started writing, sending me $5 to get a reel-to-reel tape, whatever it was.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah.
And then Jane became very much a part of it. I started going out on the road with my brother at that point, too.
Yes, Artie Traum.
Later, and with Artie, and we started a duet and started going on the road. So Jane was left at home running the tapes off on the kitchen table and packing them up. And
how did you meet Jane? How did you meet Jane?
I met Jane, well, actually, that's a whole story in itself, but hanging around the village and the folk scene, and she had a friend and roommate who was a folk singer named Ellen Adler. And she, through Ellen, who I dated once or twice back then, I met Jane.
Oh.
And we're actually running into her and asking her out was a whole other, it's probably too long a story to tell here, but needless to say, we met in the village, and one day I just was going to a friend's engagement party way out in Queens somewhere, and I thought, I should bring a date, and so I asked Jane if she'd go with me.
Aww.
And she said yes. So,
and how long have you been together?
Together?
Yeah.
God, I don't have an adding machine big enough. Well, we've been married. In May, it'll be 62 years.
Wow.
And we were together a year and a half before that.
Oh, my gosh.
Whatever that is, it's a lifetime.
It's a lifetime, and it's so beautiful. Yeah. Wow, that's a real love story. Real love story.
Yeah.
I hope you're doing something fun for your anniversary.
On my anniversary, we're doing the Bob Dylan concert.
Oh, okay. All right. That's something fun.
I don't know if that's fun.
Yeah.
But probably the day or two before or something, we'll do something special. I don't know exactly what.
That's pretty special. Tell me how you found Woodstock, which is home to you now.
I had known about Woodstock even when I was going to high school because the high kids, there used to be the Art Students League here, and many of my art, as opposed to music friends, my art friends would come up to the Art Students League in the summer here. And I came and visited a couple of times. And we also used to bring, Jane and I both worked at a summer camp in the Catskills called Lincoln Farm. It was a teenage camp. Still going, I think, but obviously not under the same management. But so we worked at this Lincoln Farm camp, and we used to take trips with kids in big open trucks, which you could never do anymore.
Right. Yep.
And we used to come to Woodstock and go to the Woodstock Playhouse and take the kids to a show and that kind of thing. And the owner of the Woodstock Playhouse, the owner and manager, who became a really, really close friend until his death about 10 years ago, his name was Edgar Rosenblum. He said, you should come and do a concert one time while you're bringing your kids, and we'll open it up to the town. So I actually did my first concert at the Woodstock Playhouse probably around 1960 or so.
Wow. Mm.
And then there was a little place called the Cafe Espresso where Bob Dylan used to hang out a lot. There were a lot of pictures of him. He wrote a lot of his early songs there. And I used to come up and play there. And then two good friends of mine have been living in Woodstock, aside from Bob Dylan and Albert Grossman and people like that. But John Harold, who I had become friendly with in Washington Square in the late 50s and was a member of the Greenbrier Boys, which was the first really popular city bluegrass band. He had moved to Woodstock, and a wonderful banjo player named Billy Fair also moved up here. And we came to visit them one day, Jane and I, and said, well, maybe we should spend the summer here. All these artists and musicians, and Dylan was living here at the time, and so we rented a little place in Bearsville, which is just on the outskirts of the town of Woodstock, for 2 summers in a row. We just became enchanted by not only the town, but the history, the artists that we hear, not only the musicians, but we got very involved with a lot of the actual graphic artists, the painters, sculptors, people like that.
Right.
And in 1967, after the summer, we went back to New York, and it was grimy and dirty, and we had 3 kids by this time, and trying to park and trying to, I don't know, it just seemed like we got to get out of here.
A good time to move.
We moved, yeah. We just got in the car. We found a house to rent, and we rented a house for a year. And that's when we got just totally involved in the Woodstock community. We met the guys from the band through Dylan, who was, we became very friendly with the Dylan family and our kids, and his kids got to know each other. And it was just a very, very nice time for us. And about a year later, my brother moved up here.
Oh, nice.
68 or so. So, we just got involved in various aspects of the Woodstock community and still are to this day.
Yeah, you definitely are. And Allen Ginsberg, too, I assume all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
Allen never lived here, but he came up here to meditate at a Zen monastery in Mount Tremper, which is also just outside Woodstock. And we became friendly through Bob Dylan. I did a session that Bob Dylan produced in New York for Allen Ginsberg, and David Amram was involved in it, and Ed Sanders, and from the Fugs, and it was just so I met Allen and we became friends, and went on the road with him as an accompanist for a couple of years, not years straight, but just on and off.
On and off, right?
And he used to come up and visit and stay with us when he was in. He often came and stayed at our house when we were in Woodstock. So he became a friend, and just one of those fortuitous things that happened in our lives when we met people who were just earth-shaking people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have had a long friendship with John Sebastian. Did you guys meet in the city, or did you meet him here in Woodstock?
We met briefly in New York around the Washington Square scene, and when he was in A Loving Spoonful, I did meet him at least once, but not so much to remember that much. Mm-hmm. He moved to Woodstock in the mid-'70s, and we became friends shortly after he and Catherine, his wife, moved here, and we've just been friends ever since.
Yeah.
They're, we call ourselves the Sebastians.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. The Sebastians. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, that's great. I finally did have John on my show last fall, too. And boy, it's like talking to you, the two of you. I would just love to have the two of you bantering back and forth and just listening. Right. I mean,
he's a wonderful storyteller.
Yeah, as
and
are
he has
you.
The stories to tell.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, he definitely has some stories to tell. I'd like to also talk about another big part of your career, which was the collaboration you had with Artie, your brother. And you guys came out with quite a few records. The first one, Happy and Artie Traum, and the New York Times called it one of the best records in any field of pop music. I mean, that's a pretty big...
It was. It was pretty amazing to get that review, and we got reviewed in Rolling Stone and some other places. It was a thrill. We got onto Capitol Records, which was a way bigger label than we ever expected, through the intersection of Albert Grossman and probably the band might have had something to do with it as well because they were on Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And we made two albums for Capitol, and they certainly didn't do as well as we had hoped for various reasons, too complicated to get into. But it did get us around the country, and we ended up, since Albert Grossman managed us at the time, we ended up opening shows for Paul Butterfield Blues Band and the band in Central Park and other places, and Tom Rush and C-Train, wonderful band that they managed, and who else? Richie Havens, and all these people that were involved in the Grossman agency, and we would go out and open shows, and we also headline shows mostly at colleges rather than at big venues. But we played folk festivals, Newport a couple of times, and Philadelphia Folk Festival, and did a bunch of those things.
Right.
And it was just a wonderful time, and Artie was just a fabulous guitar player and musician and songwriter. And we put together a little band that we had for probably into the 70s. And then we kind of went separate ways. Artie got much more into kind of cool jazz and that kind of thing, which I was never able to latch on to. I'm much more of a straight traditional player. But we continued playing together for until he passed away in 2008. We had a radio show on WAMC in Albany.
That is so cool.
3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. It was a live, sort of like a mini Prairie Home Companion.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And we had wonderful local musicians, Amy Fraden and Leslie Ritter and Scott Pepito and, oh my God, Robbie Dupree would be part of it. And
Bring
Rick
It On
Bankley
Home.
Come up. Bring It On Home, it was called. And, I'm not even remembering. We had lots of guest artists. Livingston Taylor came up, and, we just had a tremendous lineup of people. Once a month we did it for 3 years, and it was just really fun.
It is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing that you guys did, that you got involved in that as well. I want to also talk just a little bit more about Homespun, because this is quite a legacy that you have built up over the last 50 plus years. It's still going. Obviously, formatting technology has changed. Homespun.com is your website. Tell me, I mean, it's way different today. Obviously, technology is apples and oranges.
Right. Well, yeah, we started out with reel-to-reel tapes, and then cassettes, audio cassettes came in a couple of years later, and that was a big revelation. And then about 10 years after that, we started with video, VHS cassettes. And that was a trial and tribulation, because it wasn't only VHS, but there was a different Sony format. There was VHS, they eventually became one thing, but then there was PAL if you wanted to sell them in Europe. It was a different format. We had to have 3 or 4 different formats. And then DVDs came in, and we switched everything over within a year to DVDs.
Whew.
And now everything is downloadable. There's no physical product left pretty much at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we went from my one series of audio tapes that we talked about, the finger-picking ones, and I started bringing in friends to do, I thought, well, maybe we should get other instruments involved. So I got Bill Keith, the great banjo player, to do banjo lessons, and then I got my brother Artie to do some lessons, and I got Kenny Kosek, a fiddle player from New York, to come up and do some fiddle lessons. And before I knew it, I had, now we have probably 700 or so.
Wow.
Different, I don't even know how many lessons we have, but we have people like Tony Rice and Sam Bush and Jerry Douglas and Dr. John and Pete Seeger and Peggy Seeger and now I'm just reeling those off the top of my head. Donald Fagen on piano from Steely Dan, of course, and just some amazing musicians. We have probably close to 300 musicians on Homespun.
Absolutely
And,
amazing. Wow.
Yeah, you can just look through them you can browse on homespun.com and, order them straight. It's instant now. You don't have to wait for the mailman to come.
Mail you a check and then, the old days,
no,
right?
There's no mailing anything.
Nothing,
you
right.
You put your credit card in and you just download it and you got it on your hard drive or wherever.
It's immediate now. There's no more waiting.
Instant.
Yeah.
That's right. Instant.
Wow.
5 minutes later, you can be watching, playing mandolin with Sam Bush or fiddle with Jay Unger, or, we just have lots of local artists and everything from, mostly it's acoustic instruments, so we have some electric guitar and some electric bass and drums. Levon Helm did a wonderful series video for us. It's just a thrilling thing. Rick Danko did something on electric bass.
And you've got this stuff. This is like never going away. This is, this is always going to be there. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
We feel like it's an archive that documents as well as teaches.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And Happy, you've also had a really wonderful solo career, starting with your first album in 1975, Relax Your Mind. I believe the latest one, which I play quite often here just for the love of it, is the last one that was released in 2015. Working on any other recording?
I am actually. I'm actually putting the finishing touches on another record, my next one after Just for the Love of It.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think I'm hoping by the end of the spring, I will have everything ready to be mixed, and maybe by late summer or sometime in the summer, maybe we'll see some copies. Depends on how fast I can get the whole thing finished. But it's getting very close. I have some really nice songs on there. A lot of traditional stuff, as usual, but I have an Eric Anderson song. I have an old one that I did with Artie back in around 71, and I just re-recorded that. And I have some great players, of course. I have John Sebastian, Cindy Cash Dollar, Eric Parker on drums, Byron Isaacs on bass, and I have lots of guests, lots of other artists singing and playing on it.
Do you have a title? Do you have a title for it yet?
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. It'll all come together for sure. And in the meantime, you've got some great shows coming up, Happy. You and your friend Jim also next weekend.
There's nothing better than playing with Jim Kweskin.
Oh.
For one thing, probably people know about him from the Jim Kweskin Jug Band from, way back in the day. But he's a walking encyclopedia of great folk and pop songs from before probably 1940. I'm not sure he knows anything after 1940, but but boy, he's a wonderful singer and a wonderful guitar player, and we just have so much fun when we trade licks and play songs together.
Oh.
It's just a joy to be with him. We've done a few little tours around the Northeast. We were out in California together too a few years ago, and played a couple of festivals and a lot of folk clubs and things. And we had to put it on hold because of COVID, but now we're sort of getting our courage up, and we got we figured the Town Crier and the Stissing Center are two places that, if anything's safe, those places will be.
Right.
They're very conscious of health and safety. So, and I love the Town Crier. I've been playing there for almost since we started playing. Phil Sagana's place has just always been a mainstay for any traditional or folk or acoustic.
Absolutely.
Act,
he's celebrating his 50th year coming up too.
It's just great to be back at the Town Crier again. And the Stissing Center is new for us, but I've heard it's a wonderful venue. So that's over
in Pine
east
Plains,
across the river from Woodstock and Pine Plains.
right?
And so I'm really looking forward to testing that place out too. And
I
you
hear
just
the
can't go wrong with
acoustics are
some place.
phenomenal.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you've got the annual Bob Dylan birthday concert coming up May 29th, your anniversary.
Right.
And that's at
right.
Bearsville?
That's at the Bearsville Theater.
Yep.
And that should be a really great. So they always we're always pulling together a good cross section of acts from around the Woodstock area.
Yes. Yes.
And that's usually sold out.
Yes.
Well in advance, and I think tickets are just going on sale now.
Yeah, and people should not wait because it really does sell out. It always does. So, yeah, and that's May 29th with Happy Traum. And then, Happy, you're also doing a workshop with Richard Thompson, yes, at the Full Moon?
Yes, and this is our 10th year.
Wow.
And I've been doing this every year. I think we did have to skip a year in 2020 for obvious reasons, but this is the 10th time we're all together. And Richard, of course, is a phenomenon. You know, he's he's a towering figure in the world of songwriting and guitar playing both. Mm-hmm. And so it's a thrill to be with him. And it's a family affair. So his son, Teddy Thompson, teaches songwriting there. His son, Jack Thompson, is also always on hand to teach and play. And he plays bass and is an organizer there, and the wonderful Sloan Wainwright is there. Martin Simpson is coming over from England.
Wow!
To teach his style, amazing guitar playing. And this year, for the first time, there's been a series of just wonderful songwriting teachers there, and I'm going blank here for a second. I'll think of it.
Okay. And that's July 11th through 16th. All this info.
July, right. And it's just, the Full Moon, of course, is a fabulous resort. Yep. It's comfortable. It's very warm and friendly. Anybody can go if you can pay the freight. It's a very welcoming, warm atmosphere. People just come back year after year and just love it, and they cry when they leave at the end of the week.
It's a vacation destination. It's kind of like Fur Peace, right?
It is. Yeah. A little bigger, though. Yeah. In terms of, people, they might get 100 people there. Fur Peace is very small numbers, but intentionally so. Right,
exactly. And you're going to be at Fur Peace Ranch, which, of course, is Jorma Kaukonen's place in Ohio, August 12th through 14th. So
that's going to be virtual this year.
Oh, it is. Okay, got it.
Yeah. And people, I've done that also for more than 20 years. Mm-hmm. But this year, for the first time, it'll be virtual. So almost, anybody can sign up now and join my class.
Right.
On that, and they just have to go to Fur Peace Ranch and look up the workshops there, and they can do it from anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. And I also don't want to forget, which I love this venue, Maverick Concerts. You'll be there July 23rd, which is another wonderful treasure in Woodstock.
Yes, and that's going to be really special because I'm going to have, so far, I have Cindy Cashdollar with me, and David Mansfield, who some of your listeners might know, was on Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder tour when he was just about 19. He's a fabulous multi-instrumentalist and composer, and he's done tons of famous movie soundtracks and TV shows, and he's played with just about everybody on the scene, too. And so he's coming up specifically to be part of that, and Zach Janikian will also be on that. He's
wonderful.
Fabulous musician, and a couple of other people to be announced. So that'll be a nice that'll be a nice show, I think.
Yeah. Well, you've got it going on starting next week. Town Crier and Stissing Center, happytraum.com. Happy, I'm going to play another track or two of your music and just thank you.
Great.
It is always a pleasure. My time is almost up. So I'm just going to say, let's get people to your website, go out and see you perform live. And thank you for all the history and all the beautiful music and all the cataloging that you've done that you are guaranteed to have for eternity here for all the up and coming musicians that want to learn this music. So, yeah, thank you for all you've done.
Thank you, Rita. It's always a pleasure, and I'm on your show anytime you want.
Well, when you release that new album, I'm going to be in touch with you, and let's do that because I would love to get more of your music out there for sure. So I thank you. I hope to see you at one of these upcoming shows. Happy birthday a little early, and I'll see you out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thanks for everything.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. 91.3 WVKR Independent Radio, Poughkeepsie, New York. Let's play a track here of some music. This one's called Careless Love Blues from the latest release from Happy Traum, Just for the Love of It. 91.3 WVKR.
Love, oh love, they call it careless love. I said love, oh careless love. Love, love, they call it careless love. Don't you see what careless love has done? What it do? Well, it made me weep, made me moan. Careless love made me weep, made me moan. Careless love made me weep, made this poor boy moan. It made me lose my happy home. What my mama said. Yes, if I listen what my mama said.
What'd your mama say?
If I had listened what my poor old mama said. You know, John, I'd be home sleeping in mama's bed. I'll play that one.